Some weeks ago, fans of the Civilization series were treated to a Firaxis developer livestream where we got our first glimpse of in-game content during the Age of Discovery. Last month, I premiered a video that took a critical look at some of the new features in the forthcoming Civilization VII. As a new content creator on the scene, after making that video, I learned a lot about the Civ community and can only describe my video's reception as divisive. Fans of Civ 5 are devoted to their favorite iteration of the game and very vocal. I would describe them as just as emotional as this husky. I welcome and encourage that passion. If you have not seen that video, I will leave a link to it in the description below. Although I will eventually create a video about the divide amongst fans of the Civ series, today I want to address what we saw in the recent livestream and try to discern whether it is cause for skepticism or optimism. Welcome to Civ 6 Stories, where we explore alternatives to history through the lens of the world's most addictive video game. Before we begin, I would like to state at the outset that every point I address here is my opinion. It does not need to be yours. I defend all of my positions with reasons for why I hold them. I encourage everyone to leave their thoughts and opinions in the comments, but remember that your opinions also belong only to you. Share your reasons, but be polite and allow others theirs. Save your aggression for enemies in the game. YouTube is for peacetime. Okay, as with anything, the livestream revealed a mix of good and, well, let's call them unfinished ideas. First, the focus of the livestream and Age of Discovery was bringing the game out to sea and crossing the oceans to find new lands. In my stories, I play on continents maps and describe the flow of my gameplay happening between the old world, the continent or landmass where I begin, and the new world, the continent across the oceans not accessible before cartography. For Civ 7, the developers have made a clear distinction between homeland and distant lands. Distant lands are key to one of the game's most intriguing new mechanics, treasure fleets. Resources controlled by settlements in distant lands spawn treasure fleets that need to safely return to the homeland in order to receive rewards. This looks to be a fun new way to grow your empire as well as stymie the growth of rival empires. Overall, I think this idea is a game changer, even if parts of it are a bit half-baked at the moment. For example, treasure fleet rewards can be deployed anywhere in your home territory. It might be nice to see these rewards enhanced when deployed at specific city locations like wharfs or harbors, especially ones that have markets or bazaars. This would give players the risk-reward option of defending treasure fleets through more treacherous routes. With the Age of Discovery, boats are now able to enter ocean tiles, but oceans are treated as turn-ending terrain in which sea units can take damage after ending their turn. Boats no longer need to be in home territory to heal, but instead can end their turn in shallow water and heal before setting sail again. As players progress through the tech tree, ocean tiles become easier to cross and less damaging to boats. As a philosophy, this is great, but I don't like the hard stop and start, and the hard no ocean tiles before cartography has always bugged me in Civ 6. I like the idea of taking damage in hard seas and the possibility of losing boats that wander too far, but I think that even the earliest boats should be able to enter ocean tiles, just have them take more damage and the risk be even greater. One of the reasons why this irks me is that in the livestream, the devs find islands off the coast. With some of the new gameplay mechanics, these islands are now going to be key strategic locations upon which to build settlements. Players should be allowed to take the risk to find them. The wavy finger, not yet, that we're given smells of unnecessary scripting. Naval battles also looked very cool when the devs finally managed to show it off, and there were hints at interesting promotions for naval commanders and ways to deploy your fleets, including coordinated naval attacks. There is some concern with regard to certain civilizations having sea-based bonuses over those that don't, and how that can play out over the course of an entire game. But what I imagine the developers are leading to is demonstrating paths towards the new economic victory condition. I imagine we will get a glimpse of that as they play through the modern age in a future livestream. I suspect that there will be meaningful and alternative paths to victory that do not absolutely require players to make use of any of these mechanics, and that they will be just one of several ways to play through the game. Another element of the new gameplay mechanics that I feel will stick around, even if the idea once again doesn't seem fully developed, is the RPG element that they have added to leaders. These come out of the civilization's unique set of policies and now become traditions. This feels like a nice way to soften the civilization evolution problem, where as you transition into the next age, you keep the traditions of the civilization you played as. I think if you start as Greece, as they do in the livestream, players should be allowed to continue as Greece. Having Isabella as leader of the Greeks in the Age of Antiquity is also cool if it's an option, as much as you can be Isabella of the Zulu or Japanese, but I also think you should then similarly be allowed to be Isabella of Spain in the Age of Antiquity and not just the Age of Discovery. Maybe my Civ brain is stuck in what was, but watching Egypt or Greece just disappear because that's what happened in real history just breaks my Civ heart a bit and is antithetical to the Civilization series spirit. Sorry, I'm emotional. I'm not getting over it. But this building out the unique strengths of your leader in Civilization over time, built on traditions that you unlock and choose, that looks very cool. It looks like there is a return of leader strengths or attributes, which was a gameplay mechanic added in Civ 3 that carried over to Civ 4. We've been seeing this pop up in the first look videos as well, where Isabella is described as expansionistic and economic, Machiavelli is diplomatic and economic, or Hatshepsut is cultural and economic. It's still a bit unclear how these play out, but it seems clear that it will help to set each leader and civilization apart from one another and how they approach the game. Continuing on the idea of uniqueness, the developers hinted at the fact that not only are there unique civilization civics, but unique great people as well. Unique civilization civics is fine since it's similar to Civ or leader bonuses, but unique great people is a perilous twist to the great people mechanic. If a great scientist, artist, general, merchant, etc. have standardized bonuses similar to their effects in Civ 4, then fine. But if being Spanish allows you to recruit El Cid and have the ability to form an early core, as in Civ 6, being denied that opportunity because you are playing as the Mongols and can only recruit Timur, whose bonus is not nearly as strong, could be a balance problem. The last game mechanic that I want to talk about that looks really positive is something that was not talked about in depth during the live stream, but only hinted at. It's the idea of war support. Every Civ game has tried to curb the value of endless wars with the concept of war weariness, which has taken the form of various penalties in different iterations of the game. The best version of this that I have seen was in vanilla Civ 6, where if your population was sufficiently unhappy with non-stop warring, barbarian units would break out from your cities, similar to the Recruit Partisans espionage mission. I imagine they dispensed with this mechanic when they added espionage, but it was an effective way to remind players not to remain at war forever, as you eventually became preoccupied with battling your own population that you could no longer invade foreign cities. The happiness mechanic in Civ 5 I hated because, especially during early or ancient wars, I felt like my population should have been thrilled by my expanding empire and what it would have done for the glory of our people. Wars and people's attitudes to them change over time. Similarly, the amenities mechanic in Civ 6 is okay, but too easily offset to not really be an effective barrier to endless warfare, especially in the late game where it should have had the most pronounced effect. During the livestream, it was hinted that war support would affect your military unit's combat strength. What I surmise from this suggestion is that the longer a war goes on, and I would assume how righteous your population feels that they are in being involved in that war, will affect how strong one's units are in battle. A swordsman with bloodlust coursing through its veins in the first few turns of war would retain all of his strength, whereas that same swordsman, wearied by centuries of combat, would have their strength reduced against a similar unit of its type that may have been at war less long or feel that they have more right to the war that they are fighting. It made me curious enough to see how the mechanic would play out and how it would affect the decision to go to or stay at war. Time will tell. There were other small things hinted at during the livestream that had me moderately excited to test out, like the legacy paths, legacy rewards, and age rankings, overbuilding, as well as ageless and persistent buildings, the concept of city growth events, and the return of We Love the Monarch Day. Likewise, there were reveals that failed to excite me in a meaningful way, but didn't put me off. The cutscene between ages was a bit undercooked and didn't need to be there. The generalized age progress artwork was odd and maybe racist, like why are they playing as Spain and have a guy in a turban as their, I'm guessing, scientific advisor? Ditto the, again, economic advisor, who I guess is, I'm not even sure, but seems neither Greek nor Spanish. There was also discoveries at sea and various narrative events. Like, it's cool that you can find goodie huts at sea, but I still feel that the narrative event and the way that they are being used don't feel significant from a historical or history-telling perspective. Again, I talk about this in my previous video. But rather than waste time picking these little less impactful mechanics apart, I'd rather keep this video short and zoom on the few things that really had me cringing for fear of how they would play out during games. The first is a smaller one, but it touches at one of the core philosophies that really sinks my heart as a longtime Civ player, and it is the idea of too closely matching literal history with the history of the game, where independent powers, once called city-states, change and become age-specific as the game evolves. So if you run into Carthage in the Age of Antiquity, it is unlikely to be Carthage anymore during the Age of Discovery. Not sure what happens to it, but there you go. Weird. The second isn't a huge deal either, but it centers around the Civ 7 approach to religion. Now, everyone gets to found their own religion, and their religion and its holy site can never die. One of the great things about Civ 6 is that it separated the concepts of faith and religion. You could prioritize being a civilization that founded a religion in order to secure bonuses that were up for grabs and could help toward various victory conditions, and that was great. But it also recognized that faith, or spirituality, could be useful to a civilization that wasn't centered around a religion. Faith, thus, became a currency that could be spent in unique ways to help civilizations plug gaps along their route to any victory type. Civ 4 also had a great way of handling religion. There was no religious victory, but founding religions and spreading them became incredibly useful in other domains. In fact, in Civ 4, a single civilization could found many, if not all, the religions that were up for grabs, and all of the bonuses that entailed. Giving every civilization its own religion cheapens the mechanic, in my humble opinion. This doesn't mean that I think that players should be shut off from spiritual gameplay mechanics if they are unable to found a religion, but I prefer the idea of keeping religion and spirituality and the roles that they play in the game separate. My last 2 points of concern are a bit bigger, or should I say, I feel more strongly about them. My worry about how they will affect my enjoyment of the game feels deeper. The first is the evolution of civilizations. Vanilla Civ 6 launched with 18 civilizations, 19 if you included the Aztecs. It meant that each time you loaded up a standard-sized continents map game, you were pitted against 7 of the 19 civilizations in the game. You could play 31,284 iterations of the game before running into a map with the exact same opponents. Civilization promises to launch with 31 civilizations. Assuming that the Greeks and Spanish are 2 civilizations that are divided by their ages, meaning that they will never compete against one another, it means that, potentially, per age, there are only as many as 10 civilizations to play against. That calculates to only 36 unique games. It means that during each age, players can expect to play against the same civilizations time and time again. What makes Civilization so great is its replay value. Playing against the same civilizations over and over again makes the game, repetitive. Maybe my concern is unwarranted, but there it rests for now. My final area of concern relates to the Crises mechanic, which I had apprehensions about after the Age of Antiquity livestream, and which I talked about in my earlier video. The Age of Discovery livestream did little to assuage my anxieties. In fact, it made them worse. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, what makes the history of a particular game of Civilization fun is a player's involvement in propelling the history forward. It is their interaction with the map and with the rival civilizations that make the game interesting, not the game itself. Players are given a rule set and then the game proceeds. Interrupting the game and imposing new timed-out rules and scenarios is never what the game has been about. Again, to repeat myself, the Crises mechanic sounds fine as an option, but an imposition as part of the game. Everything about it also seems completely half-baked, and it sounds like the video game equivalent of cinematic Deus Ex Machina, where something ridiculous happens because the plot says so. Era transitions in Civ 6 were so smooth. There was a 10-turn countdown timer. Just that countdown was a kind of crisis. Players had to scramble with the idea of sacrificing faith or gold to get a great person that might get them to a golden age, or engineer their era score into a dark age to then propel them into a heroic age later on. But all there was a turn timer, and then the change. You chose a dedication, and you played on. In Civ 7, players are now asked to suffer with the idea of, okay, which crisis is it today? This one? Okay, that's the policy card I obviously need to stick in there, and then just suffer until it's over. I'm not against the idea of crises. In fact, I think it could be a cool way to shake up any game. What I am against is them being a calculated and scheduled part of every history. Does anyone remember random events from Civ 4? That was a lot of RNG. Maybe they happen, maybe they don't. Having them affect relations with rivals in ways you don't expect and force you to make some kind of trade-off is cool and can spawn a compelling history. So okay, I'm emotional about crises and the role they will inevitably play in the game. But hang on to your hats, because I'm about to tell you something that nobody pointed out during the live stream and that I'm not sure a lot of people have noticed. The developer's live stream game had the Antiquity Age end on turn 135 in 920 BCE. Fine. Then developers looked at a lot of screens and they talked about a whole bunch of stuff. When they went back to the game and started the Age of Discovery, the turn timer was at turn 1, and the year was 400 CE or AD, however you want to call it. Someone needs to explain where 1300 years of history went. Why did it just vanish? What happened? Where did it all go? You made a crisis, and the narrative team has allegedly been hard at work creating these countless story elements for the game. What the f happened to 1300 years of history? There is no history or record keeping this bad in the history of civilization, where centuries just vanish into thin air. Initially, I liked the idea of dividing the game into 3 distinct ages where each age felt more complete, but this just had me shaking my head. I hope at some point, if the game is to remain this way, there is some logical explanation for it. One person left a comment on my previous video critical of how I could have an opinion on a game I haven't played. Just a reminder that everything I say is speculation based on what we know from first look videos and developer live streams. Like any fan of the Civilization franchise, I'm desperate for a game that keeps me coming back for just one more turn. Less excited for a game that cuts out 60 or so of those turns.
Here's $40 if you leave right now.
No, I stay.
So, let me know if you think that the Age of Discovery livestream was cause for optimism or pessimism about the upcoming Civilization 7, and let me know why. And remember to keep making your own Civilization stories, your own amazing paths through history, and I'll see you next time.